Do you believe that the country could ever unite, and if so, how?
Theoretically or practically, look, I'm an eternal optimist. I like to think that Cyprus can still be solved. I still firmly believe that it is the best outcome for a solution which would reunify the parts into a single united Cypriot state, whatever we want to call that. How it would be done in terms of an end product, if you like, I firmly believe that the bizonal bicommunal federation model still remains the best optimum outcome. But having said that, there's a lot of different views on what that could mean in real terms. I tend to believe that the best outcome would be what we would call a decentralized federation, or what has also been called a loose federation, which essentially would allow the two communities to run as much of their own affairs on a day-to-day basis, and would actually only come together to have to make joint decisions on a fairly limited number of areas that one would usually expect a country to have a single competence. So, for example, foreign policy, you wouldn't expect, two different foreign policies. You wouldn't expect two defense policies. You would expect a single immigration policy, for example. So on these areas, there would have to be joint decision making. And of course, the European Union also creates a certain constraint in things now, because the EU often requires countries to speak with a single voice on issues, even if those issues are devolved. So, for example, you could have separate agriculture ministries in Belgium, but when it comes to making EU agriculture policy, the EU expects there to be just one Belgian representative empowered to speak for the Belgian state. The same would have to apply for Cyprus. So although you will have a lot of areas where the two could sort of manage their own affairs, you will still need to have some sort of decision-making mechanism, so that those decisions that might separately be made will meet with EU decision-making procedures. So all that's sort of quite a complicated way of saying, yes, I do believe that you can still get a settlement. I still think that there's a viable model on the table. Whether we can get there or not is of course a very, very different issue, and is where the real problem is at the moment. It's not, I'm very fond of saying there's a Cyprus expression for everything. And this is one of those moments when I will pull out one of my favorites, which is, it's not the complexity of it all, it's the infinity of it all. We actually know what a Cyprus settlement looks like. It's a bit of tinkering around the edges, how many senators you'll have and exact amount of territory, but they're very close to that. But it's just we lack the political will, and it just goes on and on and on.
What do you think needs to change in Cyprus to help unify them in a way?
A lot of things. I think it fundamentally comes down to leadership. I think we haven't had politicians who've really gone out and tried to sell the benefits of a settlement for a very long time now. I don't think even under the more pro-settlement politicians that they ever explained to people what a bizonal bicommunal federation meant. So, for example, in 2004, when the Annan Plan was presented, people were horrified by it. This is an abomination. But in reality, for any of us who worked on Cyprus, who understood politics and peace processes, the Annan Plan was perfectly in accordance with the idea of a bizonal bicommunal federation. But because nobody had ever been prepared for what a bizonal bicommunal federation meant, they were told to repeat it. Yeah. It was like a mantra, we want a bizonal bicommunal federation. But when they actually saw one, they didn't like it, because nobody had ever really reasoned and rationalized with them what they needed to expect. And I think, sadly, we haven't seen that since. And you can put that down. I mean, it has been a failure of political leadership. I think that, you still have political parties that hold on to absolutely antiquated views, unrealistic views. So, I mean, the only two parties which have actually really been pro-settlement, mainstream parties have been VC and AKEL. They don't talk to each other, they don't cooperate with each other. And even in VC, you've got a significant proportion who are super hardline. And in AKEL, we saw with Dimitri Christofias, who was the AKEL leader in 2004, that he was a coward. He wasn't willing to put his, the party's neck on the line, his neck on the line, to support the Annan plan, even though this was in line. So I think a lot of it really does come down to the political leadership and a failure to really talk to the people and have an honest conversation about what a settlement means, what the advantages of a settlement are, what a settlement would look like. This has all been missing in Cypriot society, Greek Cypriot society, certainly.